And then under that section, under B, we say we endorse the National Comprehensive Health Care Plan program introduced by Senator Kennedy. Any further discussion on that section? You can go over it or throw you away from it. These two very fine women were killed in that accident. So it seems to me we've got a long way to go in standard safety devices for our highways. Any questions?
As you know, you lost one of your greatest members and probably operated one of the finest Farmers Union stations in South Dakota, certainly one of the better ones, who spent a lifetime working for farmers in your organization. And a person who I grew up with his children and in his home is Russell Fortner from Britain, who had a very unfortunate untimely death this last year. And of course, we all grieve that loss because he was such a great citizen, mayor of our community at Britain, and a very, very close friend. And I know that we all miss him. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I want to thank Ben Radcliffe and others from your staff for their participation in the governor's policy conferences on agriculture, which brought together all farm groups so that we could develop a united policy for meeting the great needs of farmers and ranchers. And it's the first time that I know that it's ever been held, and we've had 3 of them, and they were very, very successful. And we will continue those meetings, and out of those meetings came a unified front for better farm programs. These meetings, in my opinion, were most productive in charting the course for improving agriculture in South Dakota. Now, my philosophy of government has been a partnership philosophy. And our concept to bring solid leadership from the governor's chair is a unified approach, a partnership approach from the federal government, the state government, the local governmental units, your organizations, various organizations, and people working toward a common goal. Now, you have helped with the job of building a great record for agriculture. It is a tribute to this farm organization and your leaders. And I want to thank you for your cooperation in this partnership effort to meet with your organization and you individually and collectively. Together, we have a pretty good record. Together, I'd like to tell you what we did in this partnership and why I thank you so much. We have worked together in the past 2 years to secure construction funding of our Oahe irrigation project, a visionary effort of 30 years. It is now a New Start program which has been appropriated by the Congress, has been appropriated as a funding, and any future appropriations will include the Oahe diversion. We restored cuts in the 1970 fiscal year agricultural conservation program, so important to us all, known to you as ACP. We ended the nearly 2-year No New Starts program in watershed development of the previous federal administration successfully. And I'm particularly interested in that because I was one of the instigators of the first watershed district in South Dakota in Marshall County, known as the Wild Rice Creek, which was a tremendous success. We opposed successfully an 8 or 10-year battle to end the fee charges of the Missouri River irrigators, which has now been resolved. We established a South Dakota Rural Development Council to coordinate government programs. We've imposed and publicly opposed, and I have written all the congressmen and all the nation's leaders, increases in beef and lamb imports, which I think has been successful. We fully funded the animal disease and diagnostic lab with your tax dollars to make it fully functional and operational. And another program that's been a vision of the Crop Improvement Association for 20 years, which I've worked with years ago and to date, is the Plant Science Building, which is now becoming a reality. We worked to get more boxcars for grain shippers. Now, we did have a shortage, but let me assure you, because of the partnership approach of your elevator, the GTA, the elevators across the state of South Dakota, and the railroads themselves, such as the Chicago Northwestern here in Huron, we kept this to a minimum and much better than any other state. We increased research funds, provided additional buildings, and increased extension funding at the South Dakota State University in Brookings. We developed steps to launch a drought prevention program based upon our weather modification investments at the School of Mines. And again, one of the nation's, if not the world leaders in this field, ready to move forward with its funding to become operational. We think that we can put 2 inches of rain across the top of all of South Dakota for an investment of between $500,000 and $1 million. And again, it goes along with our program that water is our golden future, with an attack below, on top, and in the air, in a very effective water improvement program. We work to secure the EROS data facility for South Dakota, which could have vast agricultural benefits, as you know, which it will be directed for, could bring in new employment, the scientific and the technological people of the world to this area. It's the latest development that we have in space. We've discovered the moon, and we're going to use the capability and the technology to discover the Earth, not only in the field of agriculture, but ecology and the environment and oceanography and topography and the various other natural resources of this great Earth. We have stressed the need for more REA loans for South Dakota, and I've personally met with David Hamill on behalf of the REAs to increase the funding and the extension of the loans. We instituted a new agriculture and agribusiness building here at the State Fair and here in South Dakota. We promoted livestock expansion to include dairying, poultry, swine, sheep, and cattle. Of course, using the basis of suggestions by our farm and ranch leaders, providing the opportunity for you to become participants in change, we have moved forward together with a comprehensive program. In addition, I appreciated the support from the nation's governors for adopting our resolution for parity of opportunity for rural America, with a farm bill that provides a future for farming. I also backed the coalition farm bill, assisting your efforts to get a workable piece of farm legislation. I know we both appreciated the kind remarks of our good friend, the North Dakota Senator Young, for our efforts and yours in this very important matter. As you know, the House and Senate have now agreed on a compromise. I have written suggesting that we support the Senate version, and I stand with Milton Young on his position that the compromise should not be adopted without adopting the Senate version. Unfortunately, Congress is still attuned to metropolitan America, and we have written all the nation mayors and all the national big city leaders that unless we get a strong and prosperous farm bill, we can't help the cities of America, because we will continue to outmigrate our youth from South Dakota. So we must redouble our efforts to get better rural legislation. Now, this is not a time for division in rural America. It is a time for unity. For the luxury of division is a luxury none of us can afford. Please be assured of my willingness to continue working in your direction on this very important matter. Now, your help in another matter would be most appreciated. We have proposed to President Nixon and the Cabinet a model rural development program to give rural America treatment on a par with metropolitan areas on the great problems of housing and water and sewage disposal, manpower training, and the entire gamut of federal assistance to emphasize rural development. It now has been adopted as a model program in our region. In addition to these areas, we have worked together on a rural ambulance program, improved health care, agribusiness development, and a farm-to-market road system second to none in highway construction. Now, these are all vital links in improving the quality of life for our people. I also count as a highlight the last 2 years the first Governor's Agricultural Youth Opportunity Day to encourage more youth to stay in South Dakota, stay on the farms, and stay in agribusiness. Now, this is a period, what I believe, is real progress, solution-oriented progress, with the help of you, with the help of South Dakotans to move this state forward. The job has just begun. I have offered many major areas which I intend to continue helping with the building job as long as I am privileged to serve as your chief executive. First, I plan to continue speaking out nationally for programs on behalf of rural America, and particularly agriculture. Secondly, we will, in the forthcoming legislative session, seek with you to ensure that tax reform is expanded and continued. Thirdly, I hope to continue the Agricultural Policy Conference concepts as one of the means of communicating people to people the ideas and suggestions of our rural people. In addition, we plan to offer a stepped-up program for improving rural health care, including medicine, dentistry, veterinary, and optometry, and the whole gamut of adequate health services. We hope to successfully fund and push the administration for approval of our model rural development program, which will not only benefit South Dakota, but all of rural America. We will continue to impose imports. We have requested that all foreign livestock and slaughtered livestock to be required to meet the same standards that we have in South Dakota and in the nation. We will fight for more irrigation funding in the Lower James, the Lake Andes Wagner, the Fort Randall, and the Pollock Harriet irrigation areas like we did the Ojai, and continue our program that water is our golden future. We must continue our livestock expansion program. We must encourage all farmers and ranchers to increase soil conservation and an economically sound pollution control program, which again, South Dakota leads the nation with the Quam Farm now near Elk Point, where we instituted a research project and a partnership effort to find an economic way to reduce pollution on the feedlots in America without putting the farmer out of business. We plan stepped-up funding of all our state agricultural programs. I support efforts to get more REA loans, an improved financing program, and the continuation of the 2% loans for REAs. Of course, we must attract more agribusinesses to South Dakota, such as Farmhand, Versatile Manufacturing, Penrod Pig Training Bar, which is at Gettysburg, Crest Products, Fencer Sensor at Washington Springs, Fairfield Products, which helps all the farmers in that area with a potato factory and 140 employees. We must continue a bipartisan, non-political fight for a stronger farm bill. We will and must implement weather modification. We must continue our farm-to-market road program. And of course, we must continue our efforts to increase economic growth on and off the farms. This, to me, if we act unified, non-politically, and bipartisan, we can bring forth to this state, in this country, a stopping of the out-migration of our young people, which is the key to prevent it. Losing 1,000 farms a year, half of our young people, and 200 towns trying to survive. It's a unified effort. It's something that's important to everybody because as agriculture goes, so goes the state of South Dakota and everybody in it. And again, I can't thank you and your organization enough for bringing us this assistance and this leadership for South Dakota. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. The next speaker will be the Democratic contender for the office of Governor, Richard Kneip of Salem. Kneip.
Thank you, Bart. It's a great pleasure to appear before the Farmers Union, which have been such good friends to myself through my years in government, and I look forward to a continued good relationship with you. I'll say quickly that I don't believe anyone could come before your organization today with more concern for the problems facing agriculture than I. And I must say at the same time, and look very quickly to the date of my announcement this year, when I said that I sought the office of governor to unite the people of our state in building a greater South Dakota. I noted on that same date the fact that our people were greatly divided over the major issues facing this state. And I concluded on that date by saying that I believed that we could do better to face very directly the great questions facing South Dakota. And I know full well the political consequences of speaking directly to the issues, very honestly and very directly. And so I would ask you to listen very carefully to the following remarks which I have prepared today. You might have noted in the past week a number of editorials wherein, and specifically the Argus Leader and the Rapid City Journal, took exception to the fact that major candidates in high office were not speaking to the question of taxation in this state. I recognize full well that we have a great many other interests, as expressed today by Governor Farrar. The need for a state water plan, a strong Department of Agriculture, and whatever. But I can't help but believe for 1 minute that the great concern here today, in each and every one of these chairs and in each and every one of your minds, is the great question before us in this election year, the question of tax reform. And so I shall lend myself very directly to remarks concerning that great question that faces South Dakota today. And I would ask you to listen very carefully. Look to the facts. Why have we not had tax reform in South Dakota? We have not had tax reform because leadership has avoided the problem instead of acting to solve it. Ladies and gentlemen, I have spoken many times in the course of this campaign of the need for honest leadership. I believe that if we are to solve our state's problems, leadership must take clear and definite stands on the major issues of concern to the public. There is no issue of greater concern to South Dakotans than tax reform. Every political leader has an obligation to tell the people where he stands on taxation. And so in light of that, I agree with the editorials as put forth. And I say, when reading the law as presently stated, that it's a flimsy excuse for avoiding that question. And so I have chosen today to reveal my thoughts on this all-important question. This problem has been evaded and ignored all too long. I shall speak clearly to the issue today. I believe that the major reason that tax reform is needed is because the present tax system is unacceptable to major segments of our population. It is unacceptable to you and many others, unacceptable to myself. Because our tax system is unacceptable, it is a source of much discontent and division. And these divisions over taxation have prevented agreement and therefore progress in other areas of public policy so important to this state. Unfortunately, those leaders who have avoided and delayed tax reform have done so by emphasizing the differences and divisions among our people. The future of South Dakota is not served by dividing the farmer from the laborer, from the businessman, from the professional man, and wherever. We must heal these divisions if South Dakota is to meet directly the challenges that it faces. The job of achieving tax reform, then, is of finding a tax system that is acceptable to every major group in this state. My goal as governor will be to end the division on the tax issue and unite the people around an acceptable tax program. And so I say that to unite our people is my primary goal. In this context of the need to unite our people, I wish to state my position on the initiated tax measure. As a state senator, I have tried very hard through the course of the years to be a friend to the farmer. I have sought to strengthen agriculture in South Dakota. You must know that I will continue as governor with that all-important effort. My record is very clear with the Farmers Union and legislation that you have had before the legislature. I cannot, ladies and gentlemen, however, endorse the initiated tax measure. That is not to say that you flatly reject it, but I cannot, in all honesty and sincerity, as a gubernatorial candidate, endorse the initiated tax measure. I cannot endorse it because the initiated measure is not currently acceptable to all major segments of our economy. Consequently, because of the lack of acceptance, it is not, I believe, the solution to the tax reform problem. The solution to this problem is a tax program that will unite and not divide our people. And I ask for your patience for just a very few minutes for me to give my observations very clearly on this all-important question. I do not expect you to agree with me on this position. I would hope, however, that you would recognize that I have given you an honest answer to the question of my position on the initiated tax measure. But the problem still remains. How should South Dakota achieve tax reform? What kind of program is necessary to solve the tax problem? I shall again give you clear and concise answers to those questions. I pledged tax reform in the 1971 session of the legislature. How am I going to achieve this? To achieve tax reform by uniting the people, I propose today the formation of a council for tax decision. And listen carefully. This will not be a study group. Its purpose is not to discuss the problem further, but instead to solve the problem. Its goal will be to reach a decision on a tax reform solution that will unite our people and serve the public interest. If elected, I shall begin to form the Council for Tax Decision immediately as governor-elect. The membership of the council will be drawn from every segment of our state and will include members selected from the legislature. I shall work directly and closely with the council. I shall stand in the midst of that controversy and provide leadership that's been lacking for all too many years. I shall ensure that it reaches a decision as soon as it can. I shall support and submit the decision of the council to the legislature. I shall make every effort to secure legislative approval of the tax reform proposal. I also pledge, ladies and gentlemen, that I shall not impose a new tax against the people's will. I shall instead implement the new tax that will be chosen by the people through the Council for Tax Decision. What kind of tax reform proposal is the Council for Tax Decision likely to consider? Many of our tax problems are related to the heavy dependence on the property tax. The solution is obvious. We must, at the very least, reduce property taxes and replace lost revenues with a progressive tax. I have no doubt that to reduce property taxes to any considerable degree, the Council for Tax Decision will consider and propose some type of income tax. I do not skirt the question of an income tax. It is our only major source of untapped revenue that can be directly controlled by state government. The questions of the type of base for the tax, adjusted gross, net, or whatever, and the nature of the rate schedule will be determined by the Council for Tax Decision. What is important now is to be honest with ourselves and recognize that this source of revenue must be used to achieve real and honest tax reform. I recognize also that there are additional sources of replacement revenue, and I am certain they will be considered and supported as well. These include greater economy in government and federal revenue sharing. And revenue sharing might well be a question asked later, and I'd be very happy to discuss that with you. Let me also caution that it may be precarious to rely on the hope for continuous appropriations from Washington. That might be a statement in conclusion to federal revenue sharing. In the end and final analysis, we must always act to solve our own problems with means that are under our own control. And I look to that as a fine philosophy within government. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, let me say that I have given you my views clearly and honestly, and that's been a very important part of my campaign. I cannot say to one segment one thing and to another thing. Honesty and integrity have been a part of this campaign, and I have wrestled many, many a night over this precise question. And as I said in the beginning remarks, I know full well the political consequences, and I am not seeking to walk away from the great need for tax reform in South Dakota. I, as a businessman, know full well that excessively high personal property taxes, excessively high real estate taxes, an antiquated method of assessments and valuations have done nothing more than hampered our economy. But I do say to you that for anyone with honesty and courage and integrity seeking to serve in high office, to serve all the people of this state, that I as governor must stand in the midst of that controversy and provide leadership. And to do that, I must clearly and precisely spell out to you my concerns on this all-important problem. I'm proud to talk of that honesty. I'm proud to speak of integrity. And I will not for 1 minute tell you one thing that I don't fully believe myself. I have given you my opinion on this all-important question. Right or wrong, it is my opinion. It's an honest opinion. And I think it's high time that other people in high office speak very directly to that same question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kneip. There are two candidates in opposition for the 1st District congressional seat, being left by Congressman Rifle on his retirement, and they are Dexter Gunderson, Republican, and Frank Denholm, Democrat. We'll hear next from Dexter Gunderson. Dexter?
Thank you, Bart. Governor Farrar, fellow candidates, members of the legislature, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be here this morning to take part in your convention. I think that we all have something in common.